Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So if you're not ready for a hard truth, dark, sort of morose video, then this is not going to be for you. All right. What are we going to be talking about today? Exactly what the title and the thumbnail is about how soft veterans, soft soldiers, and really combat veterans in general are not role models. We are not some bastion of moral superiority that you should be idolizing as the American public. Okay. The reason why I'm making this video is with all of the recent drama in the special operator world with, the Luttrells and the O'Neills and the Kennedys, the vast majority of people I've seen understand the reality that, once these things have been outed, it is what it is, and it's unfortunate to hear. However, there is a small subset, and I wouldn't call it small, 5%-ish, based off of the like-dislike ratio to my videos and comment section, that are under so much cognitive dissonance about finding out that their idols and their heroes are frauds, phonies, and liars. So what we're going to do in this video today is I'm going to let you guys in to what the mind of a special operator is really like. I'm going to explain to you how none of these things that are happening and these sort of moral, character-based issues are surprising. If you think about how many military or veteran influencers in general are under or have been under some type of allegation of adultery, domestic violence, stolen valor, fraud, lying about stories. The list goes on and on. I know you guys can think of a ton of them off the top of your head. A lot of people can't understand how this could possibly be. It's just veterans tearing down other veterans. No. And I put myself in the thumbnail for a reason, because I'm not a hypocrite. You should not look at me as a role model. You should not idolize what I did for a job. And I'm going to explain to you why. First thing I'm going to tell you is the criteria of how a Special Forces soldier psychologically is looked for. Okay? Every special operator, every single one, is on a sociopathic spectrum. And we look for it purposefully. A lot of people think that's crazy, but not really if you think about it. Why? What do you need a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL for? You need men who can go do morally reprehensible things to other human beings for a good cause that can then be brought back, decompartmentalize what they've done, and be reintegrated safely into society. That requires some level of sociopathic mental behavior. Now, what we don't want is when we get too far into the psychopathic realm, okay, and this becomes into complete psychopathy, narcissistic behavior, which some of that we've probably seen. Okay, so you need that balance. You need it in the spectrum, but not too high. And I tell you that for you to understand that because of that, men who are willing to go do the things I'm going to talk about in this video, you should not be shocked that these same men are willing to lie for monetary gain or lie for fame. That is nothing on the spectrum of mentally of what we're willing to do. Now, again, I said I would lead with me first, right? Because again, I'm not here to point fingers. This is not me attacking anybody personally, not veterans attacking veterans. It's for the American public, which hopefully this video gets out to a lot of people so they can understand this, can understand why this is so common in the military influencer world. Now, what was I asked to do, just like every other soft veteran? Go to a foreign country, kick in doors, eliminate threats, right? Obviously it gets way deeper strategically than that. And why? Now there's a lot of reasons that we can say why. There's the propaganda reasons over the last 20 years of fighting terrorism, if you still believe that. But really, what I did and what my teammates did is we went into someone else's country, into someone else's village, and we did absolutely horrific things to other human beings. Things that you guys cannot possibly imagine that happen in combat and war. Now, you can justify that as defending the nation, fighting terrorism. It does not change the fact that we do what we do. Okay? And the reason why that's important is I tell you that to also tell you, having done those horrible things and killed people and taken human lives, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. The biggest issue when I talk about why we're not role models or on some moral high ground, I didn't feel bad about any of those things at the time. I didn't regret what I did at the time. I don't feel bad about them years later, and I don't feel bad about them now. I don't regret them. I don't lose a second of sleep over any of that. That is not the type of person that you should look at as a role model. And I'm not rare. When my ODA went out and took the fight to the enemy, the Taliban, and we killed 50 to 60 insurgents a night, nobody was coming back boo-boo faced and sad. It was high fives, celebrations. That's normal. That's the special operator realm. That's the type of men that we're talking about here. So if you think, again, that men who can do that without losing a second of sleep at night, what are they willing to do outside of that? Now, part of the problem is sort of the wool that gets pulled over people's eyes. Because a lot of us are very, very nice people. Most Green Berets are some of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. And this is where it gets confusing for people. Some of my teammates, some of my best friends in the world are amazing fathers, amazing men, amazing husbands, and they are absolutely horrible human beings. I would die for them in a second, but that's the reality of what we're talking about up here. Okay? And don't get me wrong, you need those men. America needs those men. These are the men that is break glass in case of emergency, that we can send to do the horrific things on America's behalf so that America as a station can be uplifted. Whether that's through, morally right or wrong means, for the overall benefit of America and the future of our kids. Because as morally reprehensible as I might be saying things are, the enemy a lot of times is just as bad or worse. Because don't get me wrong, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, we're not talking about good human beings. But slaughtering other human beings, whether it's Taliban or whoever, is not a morally positive thing. It may be justifiable, it may be required, but does not make you a good person for doing it. Okay? One of the worst things I see, and this is really because of Hollywood, sort of the glamorization, the glorification of war and combat and killing. I'm not going to name names. You guys know who they are. But the influencers who are out there laughing and joking about how awesome it was for all the people they killed, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to judge you. The people who do that, there's only two reasons that they do that. No more than two. The first, they're a psychopath and they thoroughly enjoyed ending human life. That's what serial killers do. There's a lot of that. That exists. The second is the more common one, and that is they use that humor as a coping mechanism to deal with what they've done. That is understandable. Okay, so I don't judge that, but you guys should understand what's going on when you're watching a podcast with some Delta Force operator bragging about how he doesn't remember how many people he's slaughtered. It's not a good thing. That's not a role model, right? This video is about how they're not role models. He might be a hero. He might be an insane warfighter. He might be a guy that I would absolutely go into the height of combat with. But he's not a role model. Not a good person. Okay? So, again, as the public needs to understand, when it turns out that, you know, maybe a guy isn't running around with 50 grenades in a rucksack and killing 20 imaginary people from a sniper tower that doesn't exist, that is a realistic possibility for this guy to be making that stuff up because he sits on a sociopathic, narcissistic spectrum. It's not that confusing to understand why it's happening. Now, I have no issues. If you guys want to watch my channel because you think I'm entertaining, because you like the information I put out, right? The experience I have to give, all these sorts of different things. Fantastic. Glad to have you. Same thing for all the other soft channels. But if you're watching these people because you're idolizing them and looking up to them, you want your sons to be like them, that is incorrect. For any of them. Wrong. Okay? And the reason I tell you this is really good-hearted people that care about human beings do not join special forces. Right? Because at the end of the day, if you really don't want to harm people, you really don't want to hurt people, you know by joining this organization, you're most likely, and your sole training focus is going to be to go do harm to other human beings. That's our job. That's like taking human life is what all of my time is training to become the best in the world at taking other people's lives. That's the job. Good-hearted people don't join that job. Now, again, super nice people, amazing friends, fathers, husbands. But in here, there is the capability to do unseen harm to other human beings without thinking about it for a second, if called upon. Now again, I'll use myself for an example. You guys never, ever, I have never once talked about it on a podcast. I don't talk about it in person. Of people, me, or that I've been involved in, having to kill in combat, in self-defense. Okay? But I'll tell you what it's like. Not the fantasized bullshit podcast stories you're going to hear, or the books. The first two people, insurgents, that I killed was with my teammate. We were at our first compound, overlooking an open field, and then there was a big tree line right next to that field before we had to move through the tree line to get to the other compounds. I heard my buddy say to me, "What the fuck is that?" I was carrying a Mark 48 machine gun. As I turn around, two insurgents jump out of the wood line to come attack our compound from about 10 meters away. Me and my teammate, obviously from 20 to 30 feet, instantly eliminated both those people. I'll tell you, it was extremely surreal because we then had to move across the field to get to a different compound. We moved up, battle damage assessment, checked the bodies, moved on. It was like squashing a mosquito and moving on with my life. That's the reality of war. And I also tell you that because at the moment I didn't feel bad. When I walked up to them, I didn't feel bad. When I got home, I didn't feel bad. And today, I don't feel bad. Yes, now part of that is because had we not killed them, they would have killed us. That's part of war. And I'll tell you this, one of the things I struggled with the most coming home from that combat deployment was not PTSD of, I just can't understand how trying to cope with what I did, and it was so bad. The biggest issue I had was not understanding why I didn't have any issues with the things that we did at all. That took a while for me to get over, because that is not normal. Now, there's people, tons of people that are my friends, my students, my teammates that follow the channel, that watch the channel, that'll tell you Nate's super nice. Nate will bend over backwards to help you with anything you need, anything he can do, whenever he can do. That's true. I try to give back in every way I can. Charity events, speaking events to the kids. I try to be the best father, husband I can possibly be. But that does not make me a good human being. And I'll tell you this. I used to be very religious. Okay? I am no longer religious. Not because I don't believe, not because I don't have faith, but because of the things that I went and did. And the fact that I regret none of them tells me I know what God thinks of that, and I know where I'm probably going. That's a reality. So, again, when you're seeing these guys, I have no issue. You want to sell shooting courses, leadership courses. Now, if you want to buy these people's courses, take their firearms training, learn from their experience, learn from their leadership, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, do not put your heroes on a pedestal. It's the famous saying of never meet your heroes because you'll always be let down. That is the exact same thing here. So, the American public, you should support your veterans, your combat veterans. You should look at them in respect to what they've done for the nation, good or bad, their sacrifice, their service. But you should for not a second romanticize, idolize, or make them your role models. If you don't like this video and it upset you, that was kind of the point. All right, everybody. Take care.